Hi, Mikhail.
Good morning, Dr. Carr. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastically. I'm so excited that we can finally record this video, which we've been planning for a while. And welcome, everybody. And this has been one of the things that we get the most questions about as well, and one of the biggest challenges that so many of you have. So I'm really excited to discuss today the ketogenic diet with regards to the Indian diet and how Indian foods and the ketogenic diet can be meshed together. And it's challenging, but it can be done to some degree. And Dr. Carr is quite the expert on it now, and she has created a fabulous PowerPoint for us. And I'm really looking forward to discussing this with you.
Thank you. So, what we will discuss today, which is one of the challenges Mikhail and I deal with on a regular basis, is it possible to eat a ketogenic vegetarian Indian diet? So the point of focus is on the vegetarian because all Indians are not vegetarian. This is something I realized when I came to North America, and people would ask me, so you are a Hindu. I said, yes, I was born one. But how come you eat non-vegetarian food? I said, all Hindus are not vegetarian. And so two major questions that Mikhail and I will discuss today. Number one is ketogenic vegetarian Indian food. And number two is, how are you going to get adequate protein? Because this is a conversation I've had with many of you. Many of you are my friends, some of you are my patients. And our goal is not to tell you that you should become a non-vegetarian, because in India, vegetarianism is something they're born into it. It's not like many people have not chosen to be vegetarians. It's a little different. Now, a lot of people, because of ethical reasons and all that, even in India, have opted for a vegetarianism because some of them think that that's a healthier diet. So again, I am a hardcore non-vegetarian, so I don't want to sound like, I'm not supportive of what somebody else does. But Mikhail and I will basically discuss the science and how is it practically possible, and more importantly, in relation to our MDS program, what are the strategies we help you with to overcome the challenges that you might come across. So I'm going to start with sharing a PowerPoint. Okay, so Mikhail, you can see my screen, right? And I think, is that your phone that's going cling? Sorry.
No, and my computer is on Do Not Disturb, so I'm not sure.
So it's not mine. Something is going. Anyway, so is it possible to eat an Indian vegetarian ketogenic diet? That is the biggest question. And the second additional question, which is, even if you are not trying to eat a ketogenic vegetarian Indian diet, if you are a vegetarian Indian, how are you going to get enough proteins? So because one of the questions I get, I eat a lot of lentils, so Mikhail and I are going to discuss that. So by definition, now this is something which is very important, because many of you read a lot of stuff on the internet and then you come and tell me I'm eating a ketogenic vegetarian diet which my dietitian has given me. Mikhail and my definition, it's not our definition, it is the scientific definition of a ketogenic diet, is 20 grams of carbohydrates or less in a day. And just for you to understand the context, one apple is more than 20 grams of carbohydrates. So essentially, you'll find lots of definitions. Some of them have not even talked about how much of carbohydrates. And I will let Mikhail talk about the amount of fat and protein on a ketogenic diet, because some people, Mikhail, I'm sure you meet a lot of them, are under the somewhat mistaken belief that a ketogenic diet by default has to be very high fat and high protein. So that is one of the questions I will let Mikhail answer, and then I'll come to some of the stuff that I've seen many of my patients being given a recommendation by dietitians from India who have told them it's a ketogenic diet and how it would not be entirely fitting the definition that we have. So, Mikhail, what would you say about the amount of fat and protein on a regular ketogenic diet? I'm not talking about the Indian vegetarian ketogenic diet. That is a different conversation.
So a regular ketogenic diet needs to have adequate protein. Protein is the macronutrient that is essential for our bones and our muscles and our organs and our cells to repair and restore and build build themselves every single day. We use every part of our body just about every single day, and things break down, things need to be recycled and repaired and restored, and protein is very essential for that, let alone when you're sick or if you're going to the gym. Protein is important to rebuild and restore all of those things as well, and getting adequate protein in on any diet is unbelievably important. There are a few caveats to that, but it's very nuanced, and we're not going to discuss that today. And your protein needs will be very dependent on first of all, your size and your weight, how much you carry, how many cells you carry around in your body every day, as well as your activity level. And then when protein and then fat on a ketogenic diet is used as your energy source rather than carbohydrates. If you have lots of fat on your body, you will want to be using some of that fat as your energy source. You'll also want to be consuming fats so that your body has both exogenous from the outside and endogenous from the inside sources of energy that it can flip between and use whenever necessary. And one of the wonderful things about a ketogenic diet is that it naturally allows you to reduce your energy consumption, because you can use your own body fat for energy. And fat and protein, when they're combined together, are unbelievably satiating. They fill us up, and not only do they fill us up immediately, but they keep us full for a long period of time. So the desire and the need to eat constantly and consistently is reduced on a ketogenic diet, which then allows you to access your own fat stores, and we get into that cycle. So protein and fat are unbelievably important, especially on a ketogenic diet, but on any diet. For those reasons, we need to rebuild and restore. No matter what diet you are on, you always need a certain amount of protein to maintain daily bodily function, let alone to achieve optimal bodily function. And you can use carbohydrates as energy, but you can also use fats as energy. And you can't use fat as energy if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates. Your body will use carbohydrates first. But the fat and protein together will also allow you to naturally reduce your appetite and thus your need for carbohydrates.
Thank you, Mikhail. So just a few comments on that. So basically, we are talking about ketogenic diet with regard to fat loss. So essentially, I'm not going into all the nitty-gritty details. The point is your body changes the type of fuel that it uses for its activities. So the body needs fuel, and the fuel is supposed to come from your food or from the body sources. So when you use a ketogenic diet or nutritional ketosis, we'll come to all of that. We have discussed that, because otherwise we'll keep on and on about that and not go to the main topic that we want to discuss today. Essentially, what you're doing is, instead of using the carbohydrate from your food as the fuel, you are using what Mikhail calls a much more cleaner fuel, which is from the fat in your body. Now, the way to get into ketosis, and why I'm mentioning that is because our program is targeted for that. One is you can get into a nutritional ketogenic state by using a ketogenic diet, which is very low carbohydrate diet, or you can use other modalities, which we will talk about later. And that is what gets me so excited about our program. So what are the other ways of getting into ketosis that we talk about on our program if you are not able to maintain a ketogenic diet? and how it is difficult in respect to Indian vegetarian food is what we want to talk about today. So these are some of the common Indian vegetarian breakfast food. Now, many of you know that Mikhal and I don't talk about, meal plans or any of that on our MDS program. So these, Mikhal, as you can see, and all these nutritional information are from the website chronometer.com. You can go and check that. I've just got the screenshots here, but obviously the total nutritional information has everything else on it as well. So the first one is tapioca pearls. So for those of you in India, it's in Mumbai, it's the sabudana khichdi, or the sabu, I'm forgetting the names as well. So this is essentially, Mikhal, the tapioca pearls. They're also considered to be a very healthy religious food. Okay, but here I would like you to look at the amount of carbohydrate that it contains. And this is one serving, so 126 grams. So probably you're not going to eat one full serving. So let us say you go by eating just half of that. The total carbohydrate on half of that would be more than 20 grams. And for a small amount of protein, this is sabudana. So that is tapioca pearls. Next is upma. So this is again an Indian breakfast dish. And again, upma has gluten in it. It's from wheat. So total carbohydrate, again, 1 cup is 22.7. Again, more than 20 grams that we talked about. And next comes poha. Poha is flattened rice. Again, 20 grams per serving. And the last is dosa. So, Mikhal, this is a conversation which I sometimes feel very sad, because my patients will tell me, doctor, I eat a very healthy diet. And I'm thinking, yeah, let me just go through what you're already eating. So Indian vegetarian diet is essentially a grainitarian diet. So my patients will tell me, doctor, I don't eat fried food. This is what I eat. I have a dosa in the morning, and I eat 2 dosas, and I have some coconut chutney with it and no vegetables. So you can see one dosa is, 29.3 grams of carbohydrate in it. So this is something that Mikhal and I have discussed in the past, that if you were to get your protein, we'll come to that later on. So Mikhal, I would love to know what you want to say about this. These are some of the commonest Indian food, and many of my patients are unfortunately thinking that this is extremely healthy because it doesn't contain a lot of fried food. But there you are.
And unfortunately, and you and I have experienced this, many of your patients come to you and they've really, really struggled to stick to any type of diet, even a low calorie, low fat diet, which neither you nor I are proponents of, but they really struggle to stick to that because they have intense hunger and intense cravings. They feel like they number one, need to eat all the time. Their blood sugar drops, they get brain fog, and they get really, really hungry and really, really cranky all the time. And one of the biggest problems, or one of the biggest issues with that, is beginning your day without any protein and without any fat, and just with carbohydrates. And any of these, unfortunately, is a huge dose of carbohydrate first thing in the morning, which sends your blood sugar quite high, and then your blood sugar will drop about 2 hours later. So you'll need another snack because you're not going to feel particularly good. And you're choosing another low fat, low calorie snack, which is often grain centric or grain heavy, or carbohydrate heavy, and you're on this continuous cycle of being constantly hungry, constantly needing energy, and constantly spiking and dipping your blood sugars. And this is not a way to be burning fat, accessing fat in any way whatsoever, because any of the excess carbohydrate that isn't used within that cycle of high sugar, low sugar is immediately stored as fat. So no matter how few calories you're eating, you're in this constant cycle of hunger, low energy, needing to eat, and storing body fat no matter what you're doing. And it all starts with this first meal in the morning. And one of the best things about our program is we take off the pressure of first meal in the morning, because we say don't even have it. but
Yes.
um, but to start to break any long period of not eating, sorry, so overnight is probably the longest period you go without eating, and to stop that period of not eating just with a sugar rush. And it might not feel like a sugar rush because it might not taste sweet, but once you've chewed it and swallowed it, it is a sugar rush. And to start off any period of eating with a sugar rush is setting you up for failure right from the beginning.
Okay, so yes, that is very important to bear in mind, because one of the things, Mikhail, you've noticed, it's almost 100% of participants on our MDS program say one of the first things they notice is they're not hungry, because people have got used to being, kind of told that when you're on a diet for fat loss or whatever you're doing that for, one of the things is constant hunger is what you have to face. And hunger is one of the things we've kind of overcome on our program, if you will. And so this is very common, and I have seen all of these food on Indian ketogenic diet plans on the internet. Next comes, okay, now these are, of course, these are not things that Michal and I would recommend on our foods to embrace list. So what I wanted to highlight is many of you will tell me, I eat quinoa, doctor, because quinoa gives me a lot of protein. And I was actually in that delusional world too, Mikhail, when I gave up my rice. So here is, first one is brown rice. So I didn't even get the white basmati in there because the brown rice is supposed to be healthier. And you can see 1 cup of rice has 51.7 grams of carbohydrate and 5.5 grams of protein. So not a lot of protein. And it's, if you notice, it's mostly carbohydrate only and some amount of dietary fiber. And again, Mikhail, this dietary fiber would also depend on how the rice is processed. Am I right?
Yes. And with grains, I tend to not even really consider the fiber, because the cooking process will change that, and sometimes it'll make it more. Even just washing the rice will change that, so it's not accurate.
Mm-hmm. And this one is a regular Indian bread, the roti or chapati made of wheat flour. Here it says white, I think, at the top of my screen. So anyway, again, this is a small chapati, is 12.5 grams of carbohydrate and 1.7 grams of protein. Now, one thing Michal and I have talked about, and the video is on our YouTube channel, what we talk about personalized blood sugar response. So many patients tell me, doctor, I don't eat rice, I eat roti. And because they think that roti is healthier than rice. So yes, if you are comparing and you are not going to eat one small roti, in terms of carbohydrates, you might think this is less. But we have had many people on our program who have had blood sugars, and I was one of them, blood sugars going into what I call stratospheric levels by eating roti, not so much with rice. So this is where you need to have that personalized, individualized response checked. So I have digressed into that, but that is extremely important. And that is something Michal and I recommend to many of you if you haven't got the kind of results that you're expecting once you're on our program. Now with quinoa, yes, it's a good source of protein probably, but can you see the amount of carbohydrate in it? And this was not something I knew, Mikhail. So back when I switched from rice to quinoa, I hadn't lost a lot of weight. And I was thinking, what is going on? I didn't know this. So Mikhail, what would you say about these three things?
Well, I would say that 8.1 grams of protein is still not a lot of protein.
Yeah.
If that's going to be your main source of protein, or part of your main source of protein, number one, it's not a lot of protein, and number two, that's a whole bunch of carbohydrate for that protein. And unfortunately, that's one of the biggest challenges with a vegetarian diet, is any source of protein, even the lentil and the dals, which I know you'll get into, comes packed with a big carbohydrate punch. So you start to have to play around or to really manipulate things in order to get an adequate amount of protein and reduce your carbohydrate consumption, because it is very challenging to find a vegetarian source of protein that isn't attached to more carbohydrate than there is protein.
Yeah. So thank you. And again, we are not recommending that you become non-vegetarian, but these are just some of the challenges that Mikhal and I would like to discuss. And so this is again, so Amul cheese is okay, Mikhal, that's a processed cheese. But why I have it on the screen is because it has very little carbohydrate in it. So 1 cube. And again, I know we don't want to talk about processed cheese, but Amul cheese is number one, very easily available in India, practically anywhere you'll find them. And the other important thing is it doesn't cost a whole lot, because if many of my vegetarian patients like to use cheese, if they are not intolerant to dairy, and some of the wonderful cheese that we get here in Calgary, many of them are available in India too, but it becomes kind of expensive. So we do have to keep the cost in mind. And Amul cheese is something I carry around when I'm traveling in India along with my boiled eggs. So here again, yes, 1 cube has 20 grams of protein and less carbohydrates. So this is something that, well, maybe not the best option, but one of the better options to keep in your bag as a snack option if you are hungry, if you don't have options of good quality food when you're on the road. This is a very big challenge in India, Mikhal. You don't always get the kind of food you want. And this one is the cottage cheese, which is like, I'm sure you've eaten many of the dishes made in India, like palak paneer or paneer pasanda and things like that in restaurants. So paneer is essentially the Indian cottage cheese. uh, Total carbohydrate is, as you can see, it is lesser than the others compared to the protein. So the protein this is one thing where the protein is more than the carbohydrate. But the other thing is, will you be eating paneer every day? I don't know. So Mikhail, what would you say about the cheese? I just forget about the processed part of it right now, but the cheese and the paneer now.
So again, dairy, and for those, and the wonderful thing about an Indian vegetarian diet is it includes dairy, whereas in North America, a lot of people interrelate veganism, which is no meat products and no animal products at all, with vegetarianism, and dairy is taken off the table. And dairy can be a wonderful, wonderful source of protein. Dairy that has not been cultured or has not been fermented, which is cheese. Cheese is a dairy that has been cultured. Natural dairy actually also carries a lot of carbohydrate in it. There are natural sugars in milk. However, one of the good things about processing, and that could be a more natural processing like paneer, or even just a processed cheese, is that it removes a lot of just the process that the dairy goes through removes a lot of the sugar, which is fantastic. So you're left with a more protein dense source of nutrition, which is a great choice. And if you can tolerate dairy, at the end of the day, on the spectrum of what is better for your fat loss journey and what is better for your blood sugars, believe it or not, the processed cheese, and I'm not saying processed foods are good for you, but the processed cheese is a better option than the grain or the rice or the wheat, because it's giving you a little bit more protein. Now, some of you might be looking at the sodium levels of this and having a small heart attack, thinking that sodium is going to give you a heart attack. And Dr. Carr and I have discussed sodium in one of our other talks. I'm not sure if it was a video or a talk, but in the context of a low carbohydrate diet, sodium is not something that you need to be concerned about. Sodium is actually necessary for daily function. So again, of course we would like the less manufactured source of cheese, so the paneer, as opposed to the Amul cheese. And if you are tolerant of dairy, and you can eat it every single day, it is honestly a wonderful source of protein, and it's a wonderful way to get a lot of protein into your body. And one of the things that you'll notice is, if you're looking at the paneer, it's almost 53 grams of protein for 1 cup. And to eat 1 cup of paneer, that's a lot of cheese. And all of us know that, oh my goodness, I'd probably feel really full and maybe a little bit sick after eating 1 cup of paneer. And that's because it has some protein and it has some fat in it. And remember how I said protein and fat are unbelievably satiating. They keep us full. They make us full quickly, and they keep us full for a long period of time. So you're almost killing 2 birds with 1 stone there.
Okay, so I just noticed now, and Michal, that's the reason, because you and I never focus on the calories and the amount of fat in the food that we talk about. This is the reason I think many of my patients get that look when I tell them, are you eating cheese? Are you eating paneer? Cheese, or how can I eat cheese when I'm on a fat loss diet? And I'm asking, why not? It's got a lot of calories. So this is the reason. You see, 1 cube of cheese is 320 kilocalories, and 1 cup of paneer is 905 kilocalories. So now I'm beginning to understand why my patients get that, that frozen look when I tell them about eating cheese and adding more paneer. So just many of you have not probably heard us before. Michal and I don't talk about calorie counting on our program because we don't really recommend the low calorie diet. And you can see, and going by the fantastic results our participants have got, you don't have to count calories, and that is a horrible way to live life. But one of the exciting things that happens on our program is, by default, you start eating less. So yes, calories, you can see in terms of calories, these figures must be freaking out many of you, but Michal and I won't freak out with the amount of calories and the fat in there.
Dr. Carr, may I ask you to go back to the previous slide, please? Fabulous. Thank you. Actually, if you could go back. All right, that's a good one. So if we're looking at the brown rice, 1 cup of brown rice has 250 calories. Most of us could eat at least 2 cups in a sitting quite easily, a big bowl of rice. Not only could we eat a lot more than 1 cup, but it's not going to leave you satisfied. And 2 hours later, you're going to be hungry. And we have a joke here in Canada, whereas if you go for Chinese food, it doesn't matter how much Chinese food you eat, you're always hungry an hour and a half to 2 hours later. And that's because rice does not fill you up for a long period of time. The energy from the rice needs to either be used immediately or stored. So you might think that you're getting less calories in the short term, but in the long term, it's actually causing you to eat more. So now if you go to the cheese slide, if you would for me, please. That was the next slide. There we go. We can see that for 1 cup of paneer, we're getting 905 calories, which seems like a lot. But number one, eating 1 cup of paneer is not that easy. It's a lot of cheese. And number two, if you do eat 1 cup of paneer, you're probably not going to feel like eating for hours.
Yes.
Hours. So not only is it filling you up right away, but it's going to keep you full for a long period of time. So eating 250 calories of rice 6 times or 7 times or 8 times a day because you're hungry is actually going to lead you to be consuming more calories than consuming 1 cup of paneer and not being able to eat for the rest of the day because you're so full from the paneer.
Yeah, so this is, the low calorie diet is what I call the revenge of the deprived calorie. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead, otherwise we'll never proceed far. So Indian curds or dahi or yogurt here is a great favorite of a lot of people. And so this is what I wanted to, in fact, I can find that picture. So what I'd like you all to go and check is when you're buying your dahi, and many people in India, Michal, no longer make the dahi at home because it's much easier to buy. And so when they buy the dahi, I was teaching my sister-in-law to check the nutrition labels. So what are you going to check on the nutrition label? So this is a whole milk Indian style plain yogurt, and the other one is this is the natural flavored yogurt made from skimmed milk, because many of you think that skimmed milk is going to be much more healthy than whole fat milk. So you can see here again the amount. So dahi does have carbohydrate. Some of you have told me there is no carbohydrate in dahi, and 1 cup of dahi is not a lot. So 1 cup of curds, 18 grams of carbohydrate. And obviously in a day, you're not going to eat just 1 cup of dahi and nothing else. So again, if you think back to the ketogenic diet, the 20 grams of carbohydrates, and it has 12 grams of protein as well. But as Mikhail has been saying over and over again, all the vegetarian sources of protein would come with a carbohydrate as well. So this is the full fat dahi, and this is the skim milk dahi. So skim milk, again, fat has become 0. Fat was 7 there. And saturated fat, the much maligned one, is 0. So you're very happy. Trans fat is 0, which is fantastic. On sodium and salt, we'll have a separate video. Total carbohydrate is less, and protein is also less. So, like, if you are thinking that having the skim milk dahi is a better health option, maybe you need to, kind of revisit that. Mikhal, I'll let you talk about this now.
And I'll just repeat what I said before when I said milk has sugar in it. It's a natural sugar called lactose. And those of you who can't tolerate milk will know a little bit about lactose, but that's what you're seeing. And it's not this short fermentation process to make dahi or to make yogurt that removes the sugar. It's the longer fermentation process that makes cheese, or the culturing process that makes cheese, that actually eliminates the sugars. So although yogurt is a better source of protein and a better source of carbohydrate than your grains, it's still packing a carbohydrate punch with the protein, right? You're still getting more carbohydrate than you are protein when you're doing the yogurt. So cheese is the exception to this.
So, Mikhal, one more question about Greek yogurt, because I have seen Greek yogurt in stores in Mumbai now. Yeah. And for my listeners in India, again, please read the nutrition label, because some of those Greek yogurts are not just the plain Greek yogurt. They have added stuff in them, and just look at the amount of carbohydrate in them. In fact, I was having a conversation with the lady who was promoting the Greek yogurt, and this was at a dietitian's conference in Mumbai. So I told her, why are you adding all this sugar into the yogurt? She said, yeah, it is there. It improves the taste. I said, people have to become more mature than just going for the taste. So, Mikhal, what would you say about Greek yogurt versus the regular yogurt that people have?
The Greek yogurt has been drained, so it's thicker. And that removes a little bit more of the carbohydrate, and it concentrates a little bit more of the protein. However, you're still getting, even in the natural Greek yogurt, you're still getting some carbohydrates. So you might notice a few grams less of carbohydrate and a few grams more of protein. And that's only because some of the water has been drained out. So you're getting more, the concentration of the protein is higher, and a little bit of the sugar is drained out in the water, in the whey, in that water that comes out of it. And it's great. And people notice that it's a lot more filling than regular yogurt, and that's generally because you're getting more protein and fat bang for your buck for a small amount. So good option, but again, check your ingredients and check the nutrition label. Both ingredients will tell you if there's anything added other than just milk and bacterial culture, and the nutrition facts label will tell you how much sugar you're getting in a portion, and what a portion actually of that yogurt actually is. Because I could reduce the carbohydrates of the dahi over here, just by, instead of 1 cup, have half a cup, and then it's only 9 grams of carbohydrates. But are you really just going to eat half a cup? So be mindful of that as well.
Another question, Mikhal, I just thought when you talked about Greek yogurt. So in India, what happens? A lot of people make yogurt at home, And do you think hanging that homemade yogurt in a well, not necessarily always muslin cloth, but a cotton cloth, because that is something I remember years ago my mother used to do to make paneer. But
Right.
if they hang that curd and it becomes a thicker one, would that be a better option? And this is for those of you who are making the curds at home, because I know some of you do that.
Yes, yes, it is. As long as it's made, and especially if it's made with full fat milk.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't tell you exactly how many because it hasn't been measured in a bomb calorimeter. I couldn't
Mm.
tell you how many carbohydrates are being removed or how many are left. But yes, it is a better option.
Yeah, so that is again and one more thing for you all to try out. So Greek yogurt, Mikhail, this is where my ignorance comes in. Uh, is the essential difference in the way it is made and it becomes a thicker yogurt versus the regular yogurt that we buy, or is there any other change in the process that happens? Because Greek yogurt is something a lot of people love, I know.
It's fermented for a longer period of time, so
Oh, okay.
which makes it thicker. It also
Mhm.
makes it a little bit more sour. And
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people get something similar by hanging their yogurt or making a yogurt cheese, right? Which is
Mhm.
where you can just hang your yogurt, in a muslin cloth over a bowl in the fridge, or you hang it over the. I know my grandmother used to do it as well. She used to hang it over the tap at the sink,
Yeah,
and
we've seen that in our homes as well.
you get this almost cream cheese product afterwards, which is really high in protein and some really good fats, and it's lower in carbohydrate because the carbohydrates are what are water soluble and will get drained out. So not all of the carbohydrates, but some will get drained out in the water. So traditional Greek yogurt is just fermented for longer, but a lot of the processing now that goes into it, they just they drain it, which is easier and quicker.
And another important thing, Mikhail, is Greek yogurt in India does cost more, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it does cost more than the regular yogurt that you can find in the market. So that is also something that we cannot completely ignore.
So, and that's because it takes more raw product to create the same
Yeah.
the same amount, because you're either fermenting it for a longer period of time or you're draining it. You're removing some of the
Mhm.
products.
Okay, so next, where have I reached? This is the lentils. This is again something that many of you have told me. I get all my proteins from lentils. So Mikhail, I'm going to hand it over to you.
I have a very short thing to say about this. That all your protein is coming with a big dose of carbohydrate. A big dose. Usually double or more.
And as you can see, this is serving size is 1 into 1/4 cup of dry. So that is the tur dal. So 1/4 cup of dry would probably, maybe you're going to have, let us say, half of that. Even that would be 11 grams of carbohydrates, and that you're not going to have just one one serving of dal in a day. You're going to have more than that. And remember, our 20 grams of carbohydrates a day is the limit. So there you are. And similarly so urad dal, Mikhal, is the one that is also used to make dosas. Dosa is, I think, urad dal and rice together. And you'll know that I don't I don't know much of cooking. So that is again another kind of lentil. And the chana dal, that is the chickpeas. Now, chickpeas are very popular, and we have talked about many of you exchanging your rice or roti for a chickpea roti. uh, yes, it still does contain carbohydrates, and again, it would depend on what your personal tolerance is. So it's not completely free of carbohydrates, but it is lesser. And again, you can see the masoor dal, that is again one of the very popular dals in India. It has way more carbohydrates per serving, but the serving size has become different here. It's 100 grams of, and I think it's dry, it's uncooked dal that is 63 grams of carbohydrates. But the point we wanted to illustrate is, if you think you're getting your protein from the dal, as Mikhal has said repeatedly, you're getting a lot of carbohydrates too, and not enough protein. And one of the things we'll keep for another video is how your long-term fat loss maintenance is also going to be decided by how much of protein you're eating. Not eating adequate protein, whether it's on a vegetarian Indian diet or a non-vegetarian Indian diet too, is going to make a big difference. And protein is something that I personally struggle with too, getting adequate protein. We'll have a separate video on that. So the point on the lentil slide is you think that you're getting your proteins from lentils, but you're also getting a high dose of carbohydrates from that. Next, this is, okay, these are beans and peas. And Mikhal, I'll let you talk about the pea part first, because I know we don't normally put the peas along with the beans. So I remember you said that when we talked about something else in another video. So
Because peas and beans are all legumes and pulses. That's what they are. And especially in North America, we're taught that carrots and peas and corn are, normal vegetables. Rain. Carrots are not terrible, but not your best option. And peas are actually a pulse. They are fresh green peas are what they make dried peas out of, right? Dried green peas or lentils are of the same varietal or the same family as green peas. We just eat green peas fresh. We don't dehydrate them and then reconstitute them. So again, if you look, you're getting a huge amount of carbohydrates for your protein. And yes, there is more protein in peas and in beans and in legumes and in pulses than there are in grains, even more than in quinoa, but you're still getting that big punch of carbohydrate for your protein. So it's really, really difficult to get an adequate amount of protein without getting a huge amount of carbohydrates. And that is actually going to translate, for those of you who worry, even though Dr. Carr and I do not, into a huge amount of calories that your body either has to use or store immediately and cannot keep you full for a long period of time. So it's important. It's just important to note that it's not that you're not getting any protein, but you're not getting enough, and it's very difficult to get the amount of protein that you need without throwing your carbohydrate balance out the window.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, remember, ketogenic diet was 20 grams of carb or less a day, and you can see this is so kidney beans is the rajma that many of you love. So rajma chawal, Mikhal, that is rice and kidney beans curry, is a great favorite of a lot of people. So kidney beans and rice, it's just lots and lots of carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one is the green peas Mikhal has talked about, and the black bean soup, again, 35.2 grams of carbohydrates. And the mung beans, again, Mikhal, here I know a lot of us like the sprouted mung beans. So would the sprouting process change any of the nutrition facts?
It makes a lot of the nutrients more available. It doesn't change the carbohydrates, though.
Okay. So I know many of you love a bowl of mung beans in the morning, sprouted ones. So just be careful of what you're getting in that. Actually, I do love sprouted mung beans myself. But yeah.
This isn't an always or never. It's be mindful. And what can we add into our diets to increase our protein intake without creating a huge imbalance in our carbohydrate intake?
So this is the one on nuts, because what happens with nuts is sometimes when we snack on nuts, we forget how much we are eating. And the nutrition label, you'll notice, is for one nut. Okay, so one pistachio nut, one cashew nut, and one almond, but the peanuts is 1 cup. So just bear that in mind. So pistachio, the carbohydrate content is less, but quite often, because pistachio costs a lot more than cashews, most people, when we tell them that maybe, instead of your biscuit in the morning, switch to nuts. Some of you I know opt for the cashew nuts versus, maybe the almonds. Because the other thing that happens is probably you can eat more cashews at a time, then you can eat almonds, raw almonds. So if you have, if you
Dr.
treated the, yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the reasons that you can eat more cashews than you can almonds, I just want to point out, is that cashews have more carbohydrates than
yeah,
other nuts, and so what that means is that that protein fat balance is out, and cashews don't satisfy us as quickly as almonds or pistachios would.
yeah, and that is the reason you can end up eating a whole lot of cashews and not realize that you've gone out of ketosis completely.
Right. And, believe it or not, it is not my favorite food. And there are many drawbacks. But peanuts are actually a really solid, and I'm not saying ideal, but a solid form of protein for vegetarians, only because it's one of the very, very few vegetarian foods that has slightly more protein than it does carbohydrates. Slightly.
Yeah, that's about 4.6 grams more in 100 grams. So peanuts are very popular in India, and I am originally from Mumbai. So Mumbai peanuts in chutney with dosas and idlis, these are like great favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but again, provided you don't have a peanut allergy. Peanut allergy is not as common in India as it is here.
And
You can see that the protein is quite a bit, along with the carbohydrate, which is less, and Mikhail has pointed that out already.
right. But again, if we tend to eat roasted peanuts, or we tend to eat peanut butter that has sugar added to it, you're gonna eat more nuts in general. The problem with nuts is because they're crunchy, they tend to they tend to stimulate other responses in our bodies and in our brains and with our hormones that make it very difficult for us to regulate how many we're eating. It's very easy to sit down with a bowl of peanuts or a bowl of almonds, or especially a bowl of cashews, and eat the whole thing.
Yeah, so this is again one of the suggestions I have given to many of you is serve yourself in a small bowl, so that you know how much you're eating, rather than eating from the entire, the container or the bag that you have. And particularly if you're sitting in front of the TV or something like that, it's very easy to eat a whole lot and not realize that.
Right.
So yes, and nuts, Mikhail, would nuts be a good source of fat for vegetarian people?
Yes, nuts are a solid source of polyunsaturated fats. You want to get a variety of fats in your diet. You don't just want to get your fats from nuts, though. We want to get monounsaturated fats, and we want to get some saturated fats. I know you might think that they're bad, but they're not. And we have discussed that in our presentation all about fats. But you want to get a variety of fats. So just consuming your fats from nuts is not ideal. But having nuts as part of your fat source is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So next, okay, now we are moving into vegetables. So the vegetables, the surprise was again green beans cooked from fresh is again not really a vegetable. Oh no, sorry, Mikhail, I'm sorry. This is the vegetable green beans, I'm not talking about peas, sorry. So again, look at the amount of carbohydrate in them. Red bell peppers, it could be green bell peppers, it could be yellow bell peppers too. So that is what in India we call capsicums. They are bell peppers here. I've had to learn a lot of new terms, I tell you. So one bell pepper, large one, it's again 9.9 grams of carbohydrate. So Mikhail has talked about this before. It's not that on a ketogenic diet you don't get any carbohydrates, but you'll get a whole lot less, because all vegetables would contain some amount of carbohydrates, though it is less. You can see cauliflower rice is something we talk about a lot, and using a cauliflower pizza base and so many different ways to eat cauliflower. Cauliflower has much less carbohydrate, but look at the okra or the bhindi. This is again very popular in India, and 1 cup is not a lot. That is 12 grams of carbohydrates. Actually, bhindi is one of my favorites too. So again, bear in mind that vegetables do contain carbohydrates, but they are a whole lot less. And then, Mikhal, I'll let you talk about the fiber in them.
Right. So not in grains and legumes and pulses, but specifically in vegetables, the type of fiber that you find in a vegetable is unbelievably good for you. It's good for the bacteria in your gut, and you can almost subtract the fiber from the carbohydrates because it doesn't really have an impact on your blood sugar. And this is only the case for vegetables. And there's one other thing that I will happily subtract the fiber from, and that is coconut. But other than that, there is no subtracting fiber. So if we're looking at the green beans, 1 cup of green beans, it has almost 10 grams of carbohydrate, but 4 grams of those is fiber. So we could say that it only has 6 grams of carbohydrate. So any of your vegetables, you are welcome to do that with, because this is not a no carbohydrate diet. It's a low or a limited carbohydrate diet. And we need a lot of these vegetables for vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. And we actually need this particular fiber. We need vegetable fiber to keep your belly working well, to keep you eliminating and going to the washroom. So only when it comes to vegetables, you can remove the fiber.
Okay, so this is the net carb that many of you have asked me about. So you'll notice that we didn't talk about net carbs anywhere else except in vegetables, as Mikhal said. So again, some more vegetables. And Mikhal, a lot of people tell me about using mushrooms as a protein source. And I am not sure about that so much. I'd let you talk about it. The other thing is, would it also depend on which type of mushrooms we are talking about?
So different mushrooms, but not very high. Like mushrooms are not particular. Broccoli has more protein in it.
Yeah. And pumpkin is very popular in India too, the orange one.
Yeah,
so
not a terrible option. I mean,
no, not a terrible option. That's what tastes quite good too.
Again, all of these vegetables, especially vegetables that grow above the ground, have lots of fiber. They have lots of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. They're very, very, very good for you. We want you to eat. I would way rather you got your carbohydrates from vegetables than from grains, legumes, and pulses.
So one thing I was very surprised about is the eggplant. So eggplant in India is called the bangan. So eggplant or aubergine.
That doesn't look right. I've seen different, and again, it's so tough because I've seen different numbers for eggplant.
Yeah, I was shocked actually. I didn't think eggplants contain so much of carbohydrates.
And I've seen a different one. So I would recommend that people just check, maybe go to Chronometer and check for eggplant again.
Okay, so yeah, I think I should do that too. And I tried to change the terms as well, because I changed into aubergine and eggplant, and I think I got the same. Anyway, so this is again something that has to be verified, because I was surprised at the amount of carbohydrates in that. That was a shock. Okay, coconut. This is what Mikhal was talking about. So Mikhal, I'll let you talk about the coconut.
Coconut is just a really great source of fat. It has both monounsaturated and saturated fats in it. Really good saturated fats. It has lauric acid and capricolic acid, which are really great for fat burning. It has medium chain triglycerides. Coconut is a wonderful, wonderful food. It has a little bit of protein, not much. This is around 400 grams of coconut, so it's a lot. It does have some carbohydrate, but it has a lot of fiber. So really, really good for your gut. So a good food to include in your diet. It's not the only food you should be eating, but it's a really, really good option to get some fiber in, to get some fats in, and it's a source of good carbohydrates. So it can be part of your carbohydrate spectrum for the day. I love coconut. It tastes good. It's creamy. It adds flavor to sweet stuff, to savory stuff. And as I said, it has a whole bunch of really good fats in it for us. It's an antimicrobial, so it's an antiseptic in a way. It works, your gut bacteria love the fiber in coconut. So eat more coconut.
Thank you. And Mikhail, in India, what happens is there are a lot of coastal states like Mumbai is in Maharashtra, where coconut is a very big part of the regular food. And it's sometimes coconut that is grated and added to the curries or is cooked in many different ways. And it's very tasty. Unfortunately, because of, the saturated fat content, so many people have been asked to get off coconut. I can't tell you. I met someone whose mother was like, she was miserable. She said, my doctor said my cholesterol is high, so I have to give up all the coconut. I said, no, you can eat your. She said, I don't like my food anymore because I'm so used to eating coconut with my meal every day. So don't worry about the saturated. And believe it or not, Mikhail, people in India don't eat a lot of saturated fat anyway. And if coconut is the only source of saturated fat in a vegetarian Indian diet, and they have given that up, can you just imagine? I mean, it's really I don't know what to say. So important thing is coconut is good. If you are, again, not everyone in India eats coconuts. There are some provinces which are not by the sea. Coconut is more like it's like a street kind of thing. It doesn't happen every day. But there are coastal provinces in India where coconut oil, using coconut in daily cooking is an extremely important part. And unfortunately, many of you have been told by doctors and dietitians that because of the amount of saturated fat, you should give up that coconut.
Yeah, and we have done a talk on saturated fat, and saturated fat is not the devil it's been made out to be.
Yeah.
And especially naturally occurring saturated fats. Man-made saturated fats are terrible. Naturally occurring saturated fats are wonderful, and those found in coconuts are good for you. Otherwise, our ancestors would have died of heart attacks eons ago.
We wouldn't have been around then. Okay, so this is another question and not completely relevant to a ketogenic diet, because on a ketogenic diet, you're not supposed to be on sugars and sweeteners. So this is the conversation. I said, okay, well, how is your sugar intake? Doctor, I don't eat any sugar. And I'm thinking, wow, that's wonderful. I eat only honey and jaggery.
Right.
So, Mikhail, I'll leave it to you. So, honey and jaggery are sugar too, and I'll let Mikhail take over.
Yeah, and so we're trying to limit carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is sugar. Whether it becomes sugar in your bloodstream or whether it starts off as sugar in your mouth, sugar is sugar. It doesn't matter from a sugar perspective, not a nutrient perspective. From a sugar perspective, it doesn't matter if it's naturally occurring, if it's man-made, if it's manufactured, if it's in a fruit, if it's in a grain, if it's in honey, if it's in jaggery, if it's in maple syrup. It doesn't matter. It becomes sugar in your bloodstream the same way. Sugar is sugar is sugar. And sugar has, physiologically, sugar has a very strange effect on the human brain. We love it. We crave it. The more we have it, the more we want it. It releases a dopamine response. It makes us feel good. Yes, sugar makes you high. Sugar is a legal drug. Sugar has more impact on your brain in many instances than coffee and nicotine and alcohol and cocaine. It is, we crave it and we want it. And we look for ways to justify eating it. But no matter what, sugar is sugar is sugar. If it tastes sweet, it's going to be raising your blood sugar and it's going to be counting towards your carbohydrates. If it doesn't taste sweet, but it's a grain or legume or a pulse, or it comes from a vegetable that grows underneath the ground specifically, it has a lot of stored sugars. And when sugar is stored, it's called starch. But the minute you've chewed, you have enzymes in your mouth which break it down and make it sugar right away anyway. So I can't say it in a simpler way. Sugar is sugar is sugar. Yes, honey has more micronutrients in it than refined white sugar. 100% true. Honey has many healing properties. Honey is an amazing food. But if you're looking to lower your carbohydrates, honey is sugar. It's no different from the table sugar. It's the same thing with fruit. Fruit is sweet so that we will eat it. We crave fruit because it is sweet, because it gives us that same sugar rush. So just understand that sugar is sugar is sugar. And you and I have done a chat, we've done a talk on sugars and artificial sweeteners, and I would encourage everybody to listen to that, because we get into that in more detail. Doesn't, yes, if you're going to choose to have something sweet, of course you want something with more vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in it, as opposed to something that is devoid of anything. At the same time, though, right now, depending on your goals and your needs, is something sweet going to be serving those goals and those needs, no matter how many nutrients it has in it? Because that carbohydrate load is going to throw you off. The effect on your brain is going to make you want more. It is going to make you hungrier. So sugar is sugar is sugar.
Yes, and remember that honey and jaggery are not better options. If you're giving up sugar, you have to give up the whole group.
Sweet
Yeah.
is sweet.
Sweet is sweet. So what can you do? Obviously, we've talked so much about the problem. I would like to talk about the solutions more than the problems. And this is where getting into nutritional ketosis, what are the other options of getting into nutritional ketosis we talk about on our program. And that is where time restricted eating, intermittent fasting, that is eating in shortened intervals of time. And I'm going to rush because this video is already kind of long. So eat on at least a 12-hour eating window. We would much rather you reduce that eating window completely. Eat food that is lower in carbohydrates. You will realize that Mikhail and I don't talk about eating a ketogenic diet on our program. We talk about making different choices. Start off with eating less carbohydrate than you're used to, and adequate protein enriched with good fat. Eat real food. And Mikhail has talked about fruit being nature's candy. And the sugar thing is like, I think I've been hearing too much of it the last few weeks. So I had to add that. And so, Mikhail, what would you like to say in conclusion?
One of the things that I will say, and we will talk about this at length another time, is if we're looking to get adequate protein in, some protein supplementation might be an option. And there are definitely better and worse options for that. But yeah, you know what? Just by simply forcing yourself to eat for less hours a day, and making sure that you're eating distinct meals, not grazing like a cow all day, but eating distinct meals, just that alone, with paying a little bit more attention to your carbohydrates, will make huge, huge differences. So get rid of the sugar, get rid of the fruit, eat real food, and don't graze.
And I think we'll talk about what are the different ways of adding more protein to your diet if you are vegetarian, because today we've already spoken for a long time. And this is again, Mikhail, one of the things that I say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I always tell my vegetarian patients that if you are not adding a supplemental protein source, and you and I don't believe in adding supplements, we've talked about that before. Food comes first, then comes supplementation. But would you say, Mikhail, that for most people who are eating a traditional vegetarian Indian diet, getting adequate amount of protein would be a problem if they don't add a protein supplement?
It can be, and that's why I said supplementation is something we might want to look at.
Yeah, we will look at that on another video. So thank you, Mikhail, thank you everybody for listening to us. And I am sorry, this can sometimes seem like a lot of information on one video. I would suggest you go through it in maybe 15 minutes intervals. But these are the questions many of you have asked me. So finally, we decided to have a video on it. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
1 minute. Okay, bye now.
Bye now.